This is Kenny the puppy, and I'm here with another book thing. So what I'm doing is I'm now reading this off a completely different thing, using a completely different system and everything, just to see if maybe it helps me get through this a lot easier so I can continue making these. And because the system I did have before for the last one was a lot harder, and so I figured this would make it a lot easier so I can make more of these. Yay! So, let's just continue on with the next chapter. Chapter 2, Bedrock Breakers Stronger Than Legends. Okay. A blur of light flew right through the portal and knocked several of the warriors over. Shocked at the sight of their fallen friends, the others looked up to where the blur came from. Neon looked at what had been thrown. He saw an enchanted iron sword glowing beautifully on the floor, and picked it up. The warriors who had fallen stood back up and shook their heads. Some grabbed their fishing rods they had dropped. Others pulled out their weapons and looked around for who had thrown the sword. Neon held his ender pearl sword in one hand and the enchanted iron sword in the other. Swoosh! The one who had thrown the sword sprang from the rooftops and kicked Neon with both her feet, full strength. That caused Neon to fly back and land in a large stack of hay that toppled on top of him. The enchanted sword fell from his hands as the enchanted sword fell from his hands as he flew back. The player then picked up her sword, and with her other hand she pulled out. The nearest warrior swung his sword at the player, and she blocked just in time. She then ducked under an arrow that another warrior shot. She began running around from warrior to warrior, swinging at them one by one. All the warriors circled around Sparks Brine and dropped their fishing rods. The warriors knew they were stronger together, and they could tell the player knew that too. She would pull out one warrior at a time with a fishing rod and fight them until the other warriors caught up to her and began surrounding her. Then she would run away and use her fishing rod again. This went on for a while until she was the only one standing. Sparks Brine had dropped to the ground so he wouldn't get poked on accident. After all the warriors had fallen, the player picked them up one by one and bunched them together in one big bundle. As you can see, I've had a bit of reading practice. Sparks Brine lifted his head and watched in curiosity as the player gathered the warriors together. Neon lifted his head out of the hay in frustration and was horrified to see his friends on the floor all together at the hands of the player. Neon was so horrified he forgot he could even teleport as he struggled to get out from under the hay. What he didn't realize was that on top of the hay there were several fallen obsidian blocks that hadn't been collected. You probably don't know how heavy an obsidian block is, do you? Well, just imagine a chair right on your back. Now imagine your mama sitting on the chair after eating the largest meal in the history of history. You get the point? Good. Back to the story. By the time Neon was able to pull himself out, it was too late. But Neon was shocked when he saw what had happened when he was struggling to escape. While Neon was struggling to escape the haystack, the player pulled out a potion of healing. Neon froze in place as he saw the enemy throw a potion of healing on his friends. He didn't know what to think. Slowly, one by one, the warriors awoke and stood to their feet. They stared with astonished looks at the player who had just healed them. Go now! If I see you messing with anyone else, there won't be any second chances. The player pointed to the portal as she said that, and the warriors obeyed. They cowered back into the portal like dogs that had been caught eating someone's birthday cake. Once all 9 of the warriors ran back through the portal, it closed quickly behind them, leaving nothing but fading purple particles. Neon then realized he had been left behind. He didn't know what to do, so he quietly picked up his sword and teleported out of sight. After a few moments of silence, Sparks Brine built up enough courage to ask, "So, what's your name?" The player turned to him and smiled. She studied his face and glanced at his right arm. "My name's Candy. That that is quite the cut you got there." Candy then gestured to Sparks Brine's right arm, which was bleeding. "Hey, it's me! Me! I'm in the story! Yay!" Sparks Brine hadn't even noticed it. A fishing rod must have cut his arm, but he was too worried to notice. Oh, oh wow, I hadn't even noticed that. I keep adding in the word even. Kenny quickly handed Sparks Brine some food and water. Once he had eaten all he could, and had quenched his thirst, Sparks Brine decided to ask, "You a soldier? I have never met one who knew so much about fighting. Are you a general or something? You think I can join?" Candy giggled a little and answered, "No, I'm not a general, and not even a soldier. I come from the land where some have wings and some change form. I come from a land where there are no players or micros, there are only people. I come from a land where there are leaders and followers. That is where I come from. That land is my home." So poetic. "So, where is it?" Sparks Ryan was obviously intrigued. "I wish I knew. One moment I was in my world exploring the no-go zone, and then whoosh! I popped up in this world, and I have been looking for a way back ever since. After Candy said that, Sparks Brine got an idea. "How about you protect me from those warriors, and in return, I'll help you get back home." "Deal." Candy quickly chuckled after agreeing. "I just think it's funny that people keep asking me this as if I'm some sort of bodyguard. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to be mean. I just wanted to." "That's all right, Sparky. I just find it funny. In my world, I wasn't asked such things. Everyone already knew I and my friends had their backs." "Sparky." Oh, voice crack. "Sparky." Sparks Brine ignored just about all Candy had said after hearing that. "Sparky is a bit easier to say," Candy said, chuckling. Okay. Sparks Brine, or Sparky, didn't really care that much anyway. "Now what? Do you sleep in a players?" "Kinda both. Follow me and I will show you the camp and introduce you to the others." "Others?" With no answer, Candy turned and walked away from the town with Sparky following close behind. They entered the forest, which slowly grew thicker and thicker. The sun was still down and the mobs were out. Every now and then a zombie would walk up or a skeleton would shoot an arrow. They didn't last long, however. Just one swing and they were gone. Those enchantments must have been expensive. On the way there, Sparks Brine felt as if he was being watched. I felt my whole body shiver. At first I didn't know why. Then I knew I was being watched. It felt like a sixth sense. I turned my head faster than an ocelot. Two neon purple eyes stared straight in my direction. In horror, I turned to. "Those warriors are following us." She turned around, glowing sword in hand. It was gone. The eyes had vanished. "You sure?" I could tell she hadn't felt the same thing I had felt. We turned back on course after a few silent seconds. Even though Candy didn't seem to believe me, she was on higher alert than before. At least she didn't ignore me. Where did I go? There am I. Okay. Candy and Sparky eventually saw firelight in the distance. It slowly grew brighter until they saw 8 small tents set up in a clearing. The tents circled around a softly glowing campfire. Sparky followed Candy through the minefield of mud and cobwebs. Sparks Brine had seen a soldier base from a distance. They used the same defenses. Maybe this meant soldiers visited often. Maybe Candy was visited often. Maybe Candy was a soldier. Maybe this was all a trap. What if the whole time Candy's been working for the soldiers and I would get caught? Sparky began to tense up as he prepared to draw his sword. Candy interrupted Sparky's thoughts. Don't forget to be quiet. It looks like everyone is asleep. Go in the green tent. There's an empty bed. I'm sure Tedder won't mind the company. Who's Tedder? Who's Tedder? Sparky whispered as they tiptoed over the mud and cobwebs. In just a few moments, Sparks Brine was in a red bed, in a green tent, surrounded by people he had never met before, in a camp surrounded by mud and cobwebs. And it might all be a trap. Even though Sparky was not sure what tomorrow had, he fell asleep quicker than he fell asleep quicker than Candy pulls out her sword. And in that tent, surrounded by mud and cobwebs, strangers all Sparks Brine slept. He dreamt that he was flying. He dreamt he had powers. He dreamt he could destroy an entire army of zombies just by moving his arm. He dreamt that he was fighting other people. He dreamt that he was almost invincible. His dream became a nightmare as he dreamt of destruction. And the fear of his foes' faces brought tears into his eyes. Sweat ran down his face as his nightmare continued. The endless explosions and bolts of energy came from him onto his enemies. He was no longer enjoying this dream. He wanted to wake up, but felt as if he was being forced to watch himself endlessly destroying everything and everyone he saw. He felt controlled and alone. The overwhelming feeling of desolation filled his body. Even his dream felt as if it were being controlled somehow. Finally, he woke up, practically jumped out of bed. Relief replaced the desolation that had crept into his heart. He felt as if he had been holding his breath the entire night. When he began calming down, he looked up. The sun was just beginning to rise. A couple of people were looking up at him as if he were a ghost. The campfire had just been relit, and 5 people were sitting around it. 3 were cooking their breakfast. The rest of them were still asleep. Candy, who was cooking some chicken, was the first to speak. That must have been some dream. You woke me and a few others up with your tossing and turning. I'm surprised Tedder is still asleep. They all looked at the player next to Sparky. He was sleeping as if he had cotton in his ears. Maybe it was because he was sleeping on a super soft bed, which was a rare item in this world that was so soft you could sleep through anything. His character looked like some sort of derpy creature wearing green and purple pajamas. Oh, okay. Sparky had seen weirder. Once, a player walked into town. His entire body was nothing but derpy faces. No one knew where to look while talking to him. They all just had to pick a face. After a few minutes, Sparky noticed one of the people was looking at him as if he had seen him from somewhere. This person was a micro-soldier. Even his expressions were soldier-like, except... Man, it's the wrong spelling. Oh man, grammar police, bring in grammar police. Okay, except there was something different about him. All the other soldiers Sparky had seen were excited, often happy, and always ready for the next battle. He wasn't very old, however. He wasn't very old. However, this soldier looked as if he had fought many battles, and not the fun kind. He had a small ounce of terror in his eyes. Then, in just a second, the soldier's confused and worried face turned into an angry and revenge-seeking one. As this happened, the soldier stood up and charged towards Sparks Brine. He pulled out his enchanted gold sword as he stood. As that happened, Sparks Brine's instincts kicked in. Run! Sparky bolted out of the tent and jumped right out of the camp. The soldier was right behind him. They ran and ran. Sparky tried to shake off the soldier. He ran right, left, back, sideways, all around. But the soldier knew what he was trying to do and kept his eyes on him at all times. Sparky's legs began to ache. I don't know why you are chasing me. I don't know why other soldiers were chasing me. Please tell me, what do I do? Maybe you have the wrong guy. I'm not falling for that. I know more than anyone what you did, and I'm not going to let you go." The soldier's face was proof enough that he wasn't chasing the wrong guy. Right before Sparky's legs gave out from under him, Candy swooped in to save the day. She hung onto a fishing rod and swung between the two of them. "Stop! Talk to each other! Don't charge before questioning!" She stood between the two of them. The soldier looked at Sparks Brine with pure hatred. Sparks Brine had never seen someone so angry before. He looked back at the soldier with confusion in his light blue eyes. "DJ, you going to tell me why you were chasing Sparky? When you told me Sparky was going to join us, I had no idea you meant the evilest man in the history of the known universe." The soldier, now known as DJ, drew an enchanted bow and aimed it at Sparky. "What did I do? I don't even know what you are talking about. I never hurt anyone." "Liar!" DJ shot the bow. Sparky ducked just in time to miss it. DJ's anger seemed to vanish with the arrow. "Sorry, Sparky. I guess maybe I might not remember correctly." DJ's face didn't say the same thing though. Sparky could tell DJ was still angry. Slowly, the three of them began to calm down and walk back towards the camp. "I'm sorry for your loss, DJ. But you shouldn't blame others." Candy talked with compassion, and she seemed to know how he felt. Probably had lost something at one point. The end. Hope you guys liked that. Let me go back and change a few things. I'm gonna be editing this because this is on Wattpad. If you guys want to find it, I forgot to actually say last time what it was on. This is all on Wattpad. And so yes, this is all on Wattpad. The book is finished, in case, pretty sure you knew. I also have so many other books you can read as well. Ones that come after this, ones I am planning for that are like prequels. One of them follows even Candy's story, my character's story, and all of that is kind of great stuff. Anyway, I will see you all later in the next chapter. Bye!